Focusing on the individual and having empathy for people are cornerstones of design thinking. And we can easily imagine how that might inform product design or marketing. But what does that have to do with sales? And how can salespeople leverage principles and techniques from design thinking? That's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Jim Kalbach. I am the chief evangelist at Mural, and I'm here with our very, very special guest, Ashley Welch. Hi, Ashley. How are you?
Hey, Jim. I'm well. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, Somersault Innovation?
Sure. So I've been in sales for my whole career, so over 30 years. Started Somersault Innovation 10 years ago in order to bring design thinking tools, as you just mentioned, into the sales community to help sellers grow pipeline, grow revenue, get closer to the decision makers that they want to have relationships with. And it's like a treasure trove of tools that we stumbled upon that have a huge impact on sales. So with go-to-market teams in large companies, particularly those in complex sales.
Yeah, and speaking of treasure troves, you have your book here, Naked Sales, right? And we've worked together before here at Mural with you, and I know that there is a ton of great information that is kind of breakthrough-ish, I think, for salespeople, right? And so why don't you tell us a little bit about Naked Sales? I always feel overdressed when I look at your title here, but we'll keep our clothes on. But what is Naked Sales?
Yeah, so we named the title Naked Sales, of course, to be provocative, but but more than anything to say, how do we show up as our best selves in the sales environment, stripped of all the assumptions we might make, stripped of all the need to close, and just be our best, authentic, curious selves in a sales environment, which translates actually to better relationships and more deals.
Wow, that's powerful. I never knew that about the title, but it makes so much sense now. And you kind of have this model here too. Can you tell us about this? What's going on here?
Yeah. So what we did is we translated what is a longer design thing, or a long design thinking process, usually has 5-stage and lots of tools, into sort of through the lens of a seller, what's most useful. And there are 3 stages we focus on, which is discovery, insights, and acceleration. And what that means is, do great discovery, so you really understand your customer and their customers and what they care about. Translate that into insights that are meaningful to your customer, not to you, to your customer. And then lastly, how do you start co-creating as early as possible so you get your customers' fingerprints on the solution and build their buy-in and trust as you go?
That's great. I love the word co-creation and all of those other things too. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think you have a method that you want to share, and it's more in the discovery area. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a lot in the discovery, but we have a space in the Mural for these other pieces, insight and acceleration.
Oh, okay, great. Well, you know what, Ashley, I'm going to follow you. Why don't you walk us through your method and your template here?
Yeah, great. Okay, so I want to just say first off that using a whiteboard like Mural is such gold in a sales process. It gets you collaborating with your customer online, and it makes things visual, which is very powerful. So what you see here in a template is spaces for you to put what you've learned about the customer, so you can share it back to them in a concise way, and it demonstrates both that you're paying attention, what you're learning. It also enables you to say, hey, did I get this right? What would you change? So I use these all the time. And this top part of it is really sort of maybe your synthesized version of it, whereas down below here are where you take your notes. You see a note section, interview section. So what's here is I would put our logo, your customer's logo right here. And then this is really your discovery. What have you learned about context? What have you learned about the goals of this organization? What I would call their macro priorities. Who are the stakeholders that are useful to know? Who's your champion? Who's perhaps in my case, the CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, or others. And you'll see, I want to point out that we've got boxes here for visuals. Putting people's faces in here is so significant. We connect, as you said in the beginning, sort of with empathy with each other just by seeing each other. So we want to see who you've talked to. And then it's so important to get stories. Like, stories elicit so much. It's also what we remember more often, and it's the way we sort of share significant things. So you might capture stories here that you've heard about your customer. I was talking to a customer the other day, And they said, we went, I love this. They said, we went naked to Hertz. And what he meant is he'd read the book and he said, I really showed up with this sort of posture of, I'm not going to assume anything. I'm going to be in a strong listening mode, but I'm also going to show them how much I understand about their customers. So anyway, I captured that story. I put a Hertz logo here and it was very useful. At the bottom here, in your discovery, you might have talked to, let's say, 6 people. But then, as I mentioned, like moving to insights would be like, what, based on what you've learned about everybody, what are some themes or insights that are coming out from that? You can list those there. And that's the notes section down here where you would have sort of taken your notes for the interviews, but your themes go up here. And then lastly, is sort of if you've got a proposal, and this may not be just one time, like one sheet, one time. It's like something you're iterating or generating over time. So you keep coming back with your customer to this board. You might list the outcomes for your engagement. So right now, another example, I'm working with a security company, software security company, and we're talking about being together at their sales kickoff events. So I've asked them, so like, well, tell me about what are the goals for this engagement? And then I list them here. So we're sort of focused in the same place. And then one thing I think is really important is when you're going to offer solutions, instead of just offering one solution, like it's either yes or no, right? Offer more than one, offer 2 or 3. And that way, I think you're more likely to get the perspective of someone else. You give people more choice and you're more likely to come to an agreement on something. So I'll ask you, Jim, anything that you just heard or saw that is interesting to you or you have questions about?
Well, I had a question about, you said you share this with your customers while you're doing the discovery. Are they in the canvas or are you typically sharing your screen?
Yeah, I'm typically sharing my screen.
Okay.
I find that it slows things down if I invite someone in who hasn't used Mural before. And, when you only have 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you can get to it.
It goes really quick.
I'll show them, for instance, what I've learned, who I've talked to, and say, hey, would you like to add anything? And then I'll add with stickies onto the mural as I'm listening to them.
Gotcha. And those interviews down below, I mean, if you're just talking to one, how many stakeholders are you talking to? What are all those?
Yeah. I always think the more people you can talk to, the better. So at the very beginning of an engagement, I'll either have already talked to engagement, meaning the start of a sales process. Yeah. I'll try to talk to as many people as I can. If I know someone or someone else knows someone, I'll try to talk to them. But as soon as I start the engagement, I'll say, hey, are there a couple of people in your organization I could talk to just to get a better sense of who you are and what you care about? Yeah. Let's say for me, I'm often working with go-to-market teams. And so I'll say, could I talk to an AE? Could I talk to a manager or leader? And then I'll do that and I'll put what I learn here.
Right. That's very design thinking of you to do that. That's kind of the empathy and the research and the human aspect there, right? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And this is, so we have an example over here of what a final.
Yeah, let's look at that.
And so you'll see what I really want to point out is the faces, right? These are just pulled from LinkedIn. So you make sure you put the faces of who you've talked to. This is sort of the synthesis of what you might have learned around context. Below would be the notes that just as you were learning things, you might put it all here, but the synthesis is
got you up there. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, compare this to a Salesforce record or a spreadsheet or something like that. The human really shines through in this. And you see, I'm talking to people on the customer side and here's what they look like. And here are their LinkedIn profiles too. That's great, right?
Exactly. And I think that this really doing a mural like this is starting to demonstrate that co-creative motion that I think as sellers, we want to get into as fast as possible. So I want to hear what you think about what I found, and I'm going to add that to what you see here. And so it becomes both of our boards.
Right. What are some of the impacts that you've seen in your work by working this way?
Yeah, I was thinking about that for you. Well, a recent example is we worked with a client, C1, and we worked with their engineer population, a whole group of engineers. And there was a period of time where there were a lot of people to talk to get their input on what we were going to do. So I was constantly using this board with them to say, okay, here's what we're thinking now. Here's the input we've gathered. What do you think? And then we'd iterate from there. And actually, it became quite a long board as we kept iterating until we got to the final solution. And it was a pretty sizable deal that we won. And,
right.
and this process was very much a part of that.
Right. That's a fantastic story. Those relationships and the acceleration part of this as well, too, is huge benefit for everybody.
Yeah. And I think it helps get other people up to speed. So let's say you, I'm like, Jim, I already talked to Angela.
Right. Yeah.
Here's what they said.
Right.
What do you add to that?
That's right. Yeah, that's interesting. I was working with a salesperson at IBM where they do massive implementation projects, and there's multiple sales teams. And the person I was talking to said they use Mural so that anytime they have a conversation with somebody from a different team, they can say, here's what I found, here's what I didn't found, here's where you fit into the process, right? So that storytelling around the sales process, you have the story right here. It's right in front of you.
Exactly. Yeah. The last thing I'll say, well, actually two things. One, I'm a seller myself. I do not want something that's complex or cumbersome or difficult to do. So we've worked really hard to make this pretty simple. It's very straightforward. It's easy to use. So that's one thing. Don't be afraid of this. And two, we were working with another client who, just like IBM, does this all the time. And sort of the quote that I had from them is like, as soon as I can get a customer into my Mural board with me and talk about the solution, our sort of contract to quote ratio goes way up. Quote to contract, that's what I meant. So
wow.
It definitely translates into deals when you're successful at using this process.
Huge impacts there. And if you're listening and you want to try this out as well, too, we have this template ready for you. So just look at the show notes and we'll have this template. Welch, thanks so much for being here. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, somersaultinnovation.com or find me on LinkedIn, Ashley Welch, and send me a note. I'd love to talk.
And get the book, everybody. It's pretty lean, and there's a ton of information in there. Ashley, thanks so much. It's great working with you, and let's stay in touch. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Be sure to use the template. Yeah, have a great day. Bye-bye.